State Treasurer of Louisiana, John Schroder, is here for a little bit. Hey, Mr. John, welcome back to KEEL. Thank you for taking time for us.
Hey, good morning. Happy 4th of July.
Thank you very much. I am so glad you are here. Our producer, Matt, and me, we've been doing a lot of reading about this Moody's upgrade and everything that goes along with it. And I got to tell you, because we got a lot of questions, and I'm not sure they're all going to tie together, but we'll try. First of all, let's start with the Moody's upgrade, and they upgraded our financial outlook, the state of Louisiana's financial outlook. Have I got that right?
That's correct.
And why is that important? Why does that matter?
Well, they upgrade us to stable, which is good, and every movement from that aspect is good for the state. It eventually gives confidence to the markets, to people who lend money to the states, and it eventually, hopefully, it leads to an upgrade that will allow the state to borrow money cheaper. As I tell people, I try to relate it to the normal blue-collar person. It's no different than you going to the bank and you get one interest rate based on what your debt is, and the better your debt, the better your rate's going to be. Well, the state works the same way.
Gotcha. Okay, so we had Commissioner of Administration Jay Darden on Tuesday morning, and we sort of got into this, and basically Mr. Jay told us that the reason that Moody's gave Louisiana the upgrade was because of the 7-year 4.45% sales tax, the new sales tax. Is there some validity to that?
Well, yeah, there's validity to the reason that Moody's gave the stable rating, but there's absolutely no validity to, did we need the tax, in my opinion, and are we allowing government to just expand bigger? Moody's doesn't care how big your government is. Moody's just cares that you have some way to pay for it. And that's all Moody's is concerned about.
Okay, so here's my question, and I think it's such an awesome question I wrote it down. So, we have the 4.45% sales tax for 7 years. And Mr. J said that the steady stream of money to the state was the biggest reason that Moody's gave us the upgrade. But what difference does it make how much money the state takes in if we spend it all? I.e., if we've got $10 billion in the general fund budget because we have more money coming in from the sales tax, or we've got $7 billion because we had to make cuts. What difference does that make to Moody's if Louisiana doesn't have a budget surplus?
Absolutely zero, because Moody's is just looking at our balance sheet. Moody's doesn't get into the structure of what we spend and say, you know what, guys, you're spending too much money on education, or you're spending too much money on health care. Moody's just looks, can you pay your bills? Do you pass a budget, and do you have the money to sustain it? Which is one reason why I've always argued since I've been in office, what's the big deal with Moody's? We have to have a balanced budget at the end of the year. Whether we spend $30 billion or $25 billion, our budget, by our law, by our Constitution, we have to have a balanced budget, period.
So our Moody's bond rating really has nothing to do with us spending less or being more responsible. I'm confused.
Let me unconfuse you.
Okay.
This has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not you believe the state of Louisiana is spending too much money in government. Absolutely nothing. And I would argue that we've done exactly opposite. We've done absolutely nothing to fix the structural problems that's causing the government to grow faster than the economy or your ability to pay for it. I've said that probably a dozen times on your show now, and nothing happens to fix that.
So I was looking at the total amount of general obligation bonds that the state of Louisiana issued, and it's something like $300 million a year. If the budget is, how do I phrase this? If we're going to borrow, if we're going to sell more bonds to people to pay for stuff, what was the whole budget fight about if that really doesn't have anything to do with how much money we eventually spend or borrow?
Yeah, so let's make sure we understand something. I'm not saying that we're going to go out and lend new bonds or more bonds outside of what the state normally does. in my personal opinion, because this is a whole subject matter for another day, we shouldn't borrow another dime. We ought to pay down what we have, pay down our debt that we have before we even talk about borrowing more money. But I promise you, the governor's going to come to the bond commission soon, relatively soon, looking to spend more money. And let me tell you, there's an article out this morning about the sales tax, on internet sales tax, that the administration believes they're going to have the laws in place, or not the laws, but the infrastructure in place to start collecting internet sales tax beginning in 2019. Some people in the legislature argue that we're raising all this revenue and it won't be needed because internet sales tax is going to come right behind it next year.
What is our bond debt now of all of the state budget and the bonds that we have currently issued? What is that bond debt? How much money, how much taxpayer money is going to pay off that bond debt at this time?
You know, I'm gonna get you this answer, but I'm gonna give you a ballpark. I think actual dollars spent in overhead, because obviously the bonds are much greater, and we have this carrying cost. And I want to say it's around $28 million a year.
Yeesh.
And don't quote that. I will send that to you in an email. So you have that information.
Now, you have for some time, you have been calling for structural reforms to the budget. When you talk about when John Schroder wants structural reforms to Louisiana's budgeting process, what are you talking about?
Well, it means we have a system that is starving for money, and we can't ever give it enough money. It grows at an 8-9% clip, where your personal wealth grows at 1.5%. I mean, that's impossible. I think we emailed you that chart a while back, or a graph that shows you the growth of government and your personal growth, which means you're paying the bill, but your ability to pay is about 1.5%. But the government's need is around 9%. So we just gave almost a half penny more in taxes, $500 million more, to a system that's totally structurally broken. Now, this is what the most people don't understand. The budget now that we're currently in will be the most money we've ever spent in the history of our state. So we went through all these special sessions, and all the grinding and gnashing of teeth to raise your taxes and to now spend the most money that we've ever spent in the history of our state.
We have had Republican legislators on during all the special sessions, and some are in favor. Some say the only way to fix things in Louisiana is a constitutional convention, and others say that no, that the legislature could actually fix things without starting from square one. What do you think about that?
That's absolutely correct. I mean, it's a cop-out. Look, for years now, I'm in Baton Rouge for my 11th year, and you're right. I have been screaming about this issue for practically 10 years now. And I originally started off saying we did need a constitution, or we needed one, and then we didn't, and then we did, because over 10 years it was never fixed. And I sort of joined the fray. Okay, if we're not going to fix it through the legislature, then let's go to a constitutional convention. But I always tell people, you do not have to go to a convention to fix this problem. You do have to have some big-time political will, and use the magic word that nobody uses in government. It's a 2-letter word. You learn it very young, and it's just simply no.